it's Kevin Keatsman. Stick around. I'm coming up at 10 o'clock right after Pete Mundo on KCMO 95.7 FM.
As always, a lot of action in Jackson County. Manny Abarca is here. He is the new chairperson of the county legislature, joining us on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. And we are now back up and streaming, as always, on the KCMO Talk Radio app, the iHeart TuneIn app, and, of course, Alexa and Google Home as well. Just tell it to play KCMO Talk Radio. A lot happening, obviously. We'll see what the future is for the Royals. Chiefs announced they're leaving a couple of weeks ago. But as chairperson, one of the first ordinances that was introduced yesterday by Legislator Abarca was a deal around ICE agents and whether or not they would be allowed to wear masks in Jackson County. Sheriff Forte has come out with a statement disagreeing with County Chair Abarca on this. Manny Abarca is here on KCMO. Good morning. We appreciate the time, Manny. Why did you feel like this was such an important ordinance to introduce on day one as the new chairman?
So couple corrections there. This was introduced back in December, unfortunately, and so it was the first ordinance that saw an agenda for us this legislative meeting. And so it kind of rolled over from the agenda, and there was no action that was taken yesterday outside of the chair situation. So, but nevertheless, it doesn't behoove the fact that it's a very important ordinance that should be taken up. I think there's no one who really agrees that law enforcement broadly should be covering their faces, their badges, or their names. And so I've already talked to Sheriff Forte about some of the discussion and trying to correct some assumptions made and some narratives played out that weren't exactly the direction of what we're trying to accomplish. So more conversations to come, but I think it's something to maintain accountability for all and safety for everyone.
What are those narratives that you want to correct the record on?
Yeah, I mean, I think currently there's a lot of current uniform policies that already exist for our municipalities. I think one of the questions that I consistently got yesterday was, is there a police force in our jurisdiction or surrounding that currently does this? And my answer was no. I mean, to my knowledge, I think that law enforcement and the Fraternal Order Police and other groups are doing a great job maintaining the community policing elements that everyone wants to see in our community. I don't think there's an officer out there that wants to put themselves in a situation where they're trying to hide their badge numbers or their names or cover their faces. Now, I will say, it was brought up yesterday, motorcycle officers, there's some breeze that goes by when you're going there, and that makes sense. And so I think those are the conversations that Forte and I are having and look forward to having more and to other law enforcement leaders as well. But this is really about maintaining a community policing element that strengthens our community and doesn't damage it.
So California Governor Gavin Newsom tried this, and he more or less, it feels like, based on what happened over the summer when this went through, got slapped down and was basically told, and the understanding was California does not and really cannot have jurisdiction over federal agents. So why do you think Jackson County would be different under your proposed ordinance?
I think there's a difference in what my friend Gavin Newsom is trying to do and what we're doing. We're saying you come into our jurisdiction, and this is the expectation. We as accountability agents and law enforcement compadres expect. And so that reality is, I think, what we're doing. We're not dictating to any federal authority that this is what you will do or won't do. We're saying you do it in our jurisdiction, and there are going to be a price to pay, whether that's civil or criminal or through violation of city and county ordinance.
And what would you say then for these federal agents who, listen, I think you would agree, have legitimate concerns about safety and doxing and their information and their families being out there? There are KCPD officers who, you well know, and I know, don't use their real names on social media. Their families don't use their real names on social media due to those concerns that currently exist. I mean, ICE is dealing with, obviously, a major increase in taxing, doxing on them. And whether you agree or disagree with what they're doing, it's a legitimate concern on their end. So how do you square that with your ordinance that's being proposed?
Sure. Let me make this very clear. I was born Mexican-American. They were not born ICE agents. They were not born police officers. These are choices they're making to do a career that in some part puts them in the line of duty that it could be jeopardized. And so that is price they pay for choosing this profession. Now, that doesn't discount the fact that there should be safety measures for law enforcement agents. But if you put yourself in front of a vehicle, what do you think is going to happen? If you choose to draw a weapon in opposition of what Supreme Court cases have said, of what policy says, then you will be held accountable. I think all law enforcement, including the judicial side and the legislative branches, have a responsibility to hold folks accountable. No one is above the law, contrary to what the president or anyone else may think. We all have to answer to someone. And so these types of things protect democracy, protect the public, and protect our communities.
How is it democracy to tell ICE agents that they have to take the chance of being doxxed or have their family in harm's way because of what they do for a living, which is a legal profession?
Sure. They are an employee of the public. They are not some authoritarian government that gets to dictate how the public is treated based upon them. They have to be accountable to the taxpayers that pay their bills.
And they are. Why are they not right now? And how does whether or not they cover their face because of doxing concerns change any of that?
Again, doxing is not a thing for public officials who are paid by taxpayers. So people dox me constantly. They go look at my address. They go look at everything. That is the price to pay for being in a public position. Now, I'm not saying that anyone should go to anyone's house of a public official, but what I am saying is they are making a choice to put themselves in a very public way, in a very public place, doing what they do as ICE agents. That does not justify that they create some special level of protection. I don't quite understand how it's democratic to assume that ICE agents are subjected to no accountability whatsoever. They're arresting U.S. citizens. That's stuff that happens in other countries without democracy.
Well, who said they have no accountability? I think it's more about, whether or not they have some level of protection. And I think comparing an ICE agent to a publicly elected official is a little bit different, right?
I think that's a fallacy in itself. I don't understand how ICE agents are currently being held accountable. The Department of Homeland Security Secretary has not once shown up to the the Committee on Homeland Security in the House. Those are not accountabilities. That's the only secretary in the United States government not to be accountable to the congressional hearing process. So I don't see accountability at all for ICE. I see them aimlessly showing up, renting cars, attacking people in the streets throughout the country. This administration targeting folks, using ICE as a Gestapo police force. So I think we have a fundamental disagreement on who is accountable and who isn't here.
Manny Abarca is the new chairperson of the Jackson County Legislature here on KCMO Talk Radio. So do you think you have the votes to get this ordinance passed?
I think there's no one who agrees that we should allow any law enforcement agent to cover badges, to cover their names, and ultimately to cover their face. If the choice was made during COVID for police officers not to wear a mask because of whatever reason, I don't understand how you can justifiably say now wearing a mask is subject to their suggestion.
So do you think you have the votes?
I think we do.
When would you like to see that passed?
As soon as possible, but I think my goal at this point is to have more conversation with both the public and more law enforcement officials. I think, again, there's some fundamental understanding that needs to happen here that this is probably something that's already within many law enforcement agencies' uniform policies and codes. So what we're talking about is really accountability for all, mainly for those who come into our jurisdictions and harm our community policing policies.
Manny Abarca is here. All right, I got to ask you, too, listen, now that you're in the chairperson, obviously, you got to figure out what's going to happen here with at least the Royals and the Chiefs, I guess, to some extent. Let me ask you, the Chiefs, as far as you're concerned, is that issue done 100%? You're moving on?
Absolutely not. The American Royal has been moving to Kansas City, Kansas for decades now. So I think we still have some opportunities to talk to the Chiefs and figure out how to bring them home to Jackson County again. They're still playing in our stadium. They got 5 years on their lease agreement that they're subject to some $150 million reimbursable taxpayer dollars. So we've got to have some serious conversations, and the same is true of the Royals. We've got to get back on that horse and figure out how to keep things moving.
On the Royals front, and as you look at it right now, the mayor said last week on this show that he thinks he can keep the Royals and he would not promise a vote of the public to keep the Royals, basically looking at incentive options that don't require a vote. You agree with that, and is that even a realistic option in your eyes?
I think having conversations with the mayor yesterday and today about a couple different topics, talking to leaders across our region and state line, I think there's more opportunity for a collective group to get together and talk about how we regionally deal with these issues. I mean, I am a fan more or less of sharing a lot of this tax burden as having voter approval. I think it's great that we're looking at other incentivized tools that don't require votes. But the public clearly spoke about what their sentiment is here for these teams. So I don't see how we get to a point where we don't engage the public on something. Certainly, I know that if we're going to do any type of tax renewal in Jackson County, we're going to have the support and trust reinstilled into Jackson County taxpayers that this is a beneficial agreement. I was always a fan of the community benefits agreement in the last vote process, although I don't think that got a lot of play because of who was the county executive. But we spent 3 years saying where the problem is, and then that final third year removing the problem. Now we have an executive ready to work. Now we have a legislature ready to get stuff done. So now it's time for us to execute.
Are you going to run for county executive?
Oh, no, that's not my plan. This wasn't in my plan. So I'm glad and honored to serve as a legislator now. And, if the voters put me back here, I'd be honored to continue to serve in that capacity.
All right. Manny Abarca is the new chairperson of the county legislature on KCMO. Thank you for being here, Manny. We appreciate the time.
Thanks, Pete.
All right. It is good to have you here on 95.7 FM.